Hello and welcome back to Campo Largo. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after seeing the beginnings of their day-to-day life. Elder Suarez dedicated a grave, or well, not exactly dedicated, but like he did the eulogy. I think that's what it's called. We saw their first outing at the I'm not sure what to call it because it's not a temple, right? It's just a church, but it's a building. It's a little beige building. And yeah, basically the starts of their day-to-day life, what they're gonna have to be getting used to, washing their own clothes unless somebody is willing to do it for them, trying to, I guess, convert people or start to try to convert people, um, go through the logs and then, figure out who isn't coming to church and then speaking to them and trying to see what's keeping them from coming, I guess. Um, Also, they spoke to each other about why they're, Mormons, why they're members of the LSD. Um, and yeah, so like, I'm hoping something else happens because, again, I don't want to read just something that is just, hey, Mormons, this is Mormons. Because, like, I don't know if this is what you guys want or would like me to read. Again, I'm only reading this because of the last sentence or the last part in the description of the visual novel, which is everything's going to go fine for them until it doesn't. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Anyway, so yeah. Yeah, so without further ado, let us continue Campo Largo. January 10th, 2008, Thursday. Having run through our specific backup plans, we hit the non-specific one, contacts in the main plaza. There, at least, we can point out the church building. The plaza is about 100 meters square, the standard block size for these llanero grid cities. It's mostly trees, grass, and concrete walkways, all well worn by sunlight and footsteps, though one side features a playground. In the center of the plaza there is a paved circle, I assume for public events. On the circle's edge is some civic artwork. Its style is very common down here in Paraná. The artists cover a brick wall with layers of differently colored stucco and then carve down through the layers, creating images with color gradients. Here, on one side of the wall depicts the municipal coats of arms of Campo Largo. The other depicts some Paranero military hero, a lion in the 19th century military uniform, the Paranero flag fluttering out behind him. The real Paranero flag hangs limply from a pole nearby, the breeze insufficient to do anything more than rearrange its folds. Unfurled, we'd see the cerulean upper two-thirds and white lower two-thirds, a large sun half risen over the white. Just as the American flag is the stars and stripes, the Paranero flag is the albiazul, white-blue, with a pun on the alba meaning dawn. I like the design. We stop at the center of the plaza and look around. On one side of the plaza, an owl pedals by on a bike. On the other, a dog sputters past on a motorcycle. We're coming up on the siesta, so everyone is rushing home from work, right past us, around us. I try to greet two people walking by, but they wave me off, one friendly, one annoyed. No one wants to be bothered now, but where else could we plan to do street contacts? Elder Suarez's voice recalls me before my mood, eyeing the pale, less hour yawning between us on lunch, verges into despair. Elder. He's pointing over to another side of the plaza, where two women, a tiger, and a capybara, which they call carpinchos down here, seem to be stopped on the corner, chatting. Okay, maybe we won't have to resort to jumping in front of motos or clapping in front of random houses. I nod and begin walking that way. About halfway there, though, we watch as they end their conversation. The pieces come together in my mind. Two women, nicely dressed on regular days, walking with apparent unified purpose, carrying side bags, different ages. Ah, yes. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. I halt and motion for Elder Suarez to do the same. Testigos, Elder. He stops. Ah, shouldn't we still contact them though? My previous interactions with Jehovah's Witnesses haven't been that great. They had a particularly combative style and some arguments about the Book of Mormon that were so perplexingly off base that I spent an entire day puzzling over their mere premise. I don't think that it'll be an effective use of time. A voice whispers in my mind, neither is clapping at houses, Elder. Better than testigos. And then, noticing that they finish their consultation, I watch as they start walking towards us. Oh no. They're on the hunt. Red alert. Elder. I nod my antlers towards a corner of the plaza, out of the Jehovah's Witnesses' way. He hesitates but follows after I've gotten about 15 feet down the path. And a couple of moments later, it turns out that, oh so blessedly, I've picked the path the Jehovah's Witnesses had planned. Or perhaps they're following us intentionally. Do Jehovah's Witnesses count coup? Some missionaries basically do that, regaling each other with tales of rhetorical battles with Jehovah's Witnesses or pastors or priests. We're not supposed to Bible bash, but apparently they can't resist bragging about being right in the face of wrongness. I hasten my pace, arriving at the corner of the plaza and turning to the right to walk alongside its outside edge. I turned around partway, never ceasing my steps to keep an eye on our pursuers. To my relief, they break off in another direction. Crisis averted. I've reduced my status to yellow alert, slowing down to scan the plaza once more for any new life signs. No one else has materialized. I really don't want to go back to clapping houses. Not right now, not with a half an hour left before lunch, just as everything closes for the siesta. I toss an inaudible little prayer heavenward for someone to talk to as we circle around the plaza, keeping our distance from the Jehovah's Witnesses until they turn away onto a side street. Shortly thereafter, it seems that I've received an answer. A muscled man, middle-aged with some gray fur, comes around the corner and moves like he's going to cross the plaza diagonally. He's not in a rush. I exchange a glance with Elder Suarez, and we wordlessly agreed to talk to him. We managed to intercept him in the center circle of the plaza in front of the colorful military bas relief. I could swear that he actually slowed down after seeing us, as if awaiting us, as if he actually wanted to talk with us, or at least was resigned to doing so. Buen dia. How goes it? The man looks us over. His eyes appear tired, slightly distant, but not vacant. Perhaps pensive? I get the feeling that he's sizing us up. Buen dia. Good to meet you. I'm Elder Hartley, and this is my companion, Elder Suarez. We're from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I point to the chapel half a block away, visible between the trees. We're here to share a message about the truths that God has restored to the earth today. If you're from here, we'd love to stop by sometime to chat. Or we could chat right now, if you have the time. The man doesn't answer straight away. That look in his eyes deepens. In contrast to our deliberately chirpier greetings, he almost seems mournful. I start to worry that I'm dreadfully misread the situation when he breaks his silence. I knew someone like you guys once. Oh yeah? See, he was in my high school class back during the dictatorship. He speaks softly, almost reverently. One day, he refused to salute the flag, said God prohibited him from swearing oaths to anyone or anything besides God. We're both listening. The sunlight around us clashes with the sudden shift of the mood. He didn't come to school next day. We never saw him again. I don't know what to say. I've heard a little about the dirty wars under South American dictatorships, but I haven't studied them. It's jarring to realize that they took place in living memory, or perhaps the majority of people with whom we interact. But Elder Suarez speaks after a moment. I'm from Andea. I have an uncle who was a college student involved in pro-democracy activism back during our dictatorship. I never met him because he was disappeared before I was born. One night he simply didn't come home. The man raises his gaze to meet Elder Suarez's eyes. It's also a little jarring to hear a missionary talking about politics. But I don't feel like Elder Suarez has violated that rule. On the contrary, I feel transgressive, intrusive. This is a pain that I don't share. One of the reasons that I joined the church was the promise that I'd be reunited with my loved ones, past and present, after death. I look forward to meeting my uncle, and I know you'll be able to see your friend again. If you like, you're welcome to join us anytime for service. He slips the man a pamphlet of the plan of salvation with our phone number, the church's address, and our worship schedule written on the back. The man takes the pamphlet and nods. Thank you. We'll see. God be with you. The man nods to Elder Suarez and walks away. We stand there to watch him go, his unhurried way. Elder, I had no idea. It's not something that I talk about much, let alone when I just meet new people. My parents don't either. Lots of people are still somewhat afraid. But I felt that it was the right thing to say there. Better than anything that I could have said for sure. As we leave the plaza en route to the bench, I think back to the encounter and realize that something doesn't quite add up, something that felt off, that I didn't grasp at the moment. Mormons don't have a prohibition on swearing allegiances to nations. We've done so for decades, still do all the time. Heck, there are Mormons fighting Mormons in the World War II. But I do know who does observe such a prohibition. His classmate, making his fateful and heroic stand for principles against power, hadn't been Mormon. He was almost certainly a Jehovah's Witness. We show up at Hermana Camiletti's house at noon. For my part, I'm damp and ready to sit down. It's amazing how you can get used to being soaked with sweat. Out the front window of her despensa wafts air from her kitchen in the back, and I think that I can smell what she's cooking, a guiso. Most of our meals with members are guisos. I sidle up to the window and clap. Instead, off from the window, we hear that Hermana's voice from around the corner. My right ear rushes to pick it up. Pasen, Elderes. I clop around the corner and see that she's set up a small table and 3 chairs on the north side of the house, blessedly in the shade of the building and of a tree. The short, stout Tatu is wearing an apron and is laying out 3 sets of plates and silverware. A basket of bread is already on the table. She looks up with a smile and waves a hand to beckon us over. Pasen, pasen. I wave back and then reach down to undo the latch on the metal gate that leads to the patio area. As I walk through, Hermana Camiletti vanishes back into her home. We take our seats in the plastic lawn chairs. Their surfaces are roughened, faded by the sun. Mine has a crack in the armrest that's been stitched back together with wire. Elder Suarez's tail is too big for the tail hole though, and he has to feed it through the gap under the armrest to sit. Hermana Camiletti reemerges, hands buried in oven mitts and a steaming glass pan of guiso on top of them. She sets it down on the hot pad, pulls a big spoon out of her apron pocket and shucks the mittens, and sits beside us. Bienvenidos a Campo Largo, Elderes. Who's saying the prayer today? I'll do it. After the prayer, she leans forward and dishes both of us a full plate's worth of guiso. I examine it though, and realize that this one isn't just protein and noodles and diced tomatoes. There's some kind of orange fleshy vegetable in it, as well as another that's milky in color, fibrous in its visible texture. Hermana Camiletti notices my attention. Ah yes, Elder. I thought that you might want something new, so I tossed in zapallo and mandicota. I hope that you like them. Ah, I'm sure I will. I say it as I spear a cube of orange zapallo on my fork. Oh, it's squash. Pumpkin, probably? I've never had pumpkin in a savory dish, but it's delicious. Now the manicota. It's dense as my fork pokes into it, and between my teeth it's starchy, substantially, as if a potato had been compressed. It's very good and a good change from the other guisos that I've had. I gesture my approval with wide eyes, a closed-mouthed smile while chewing, and a thumbs up. The hermana smiles knowingly. Elder Suarez has taken a bite or two, when the Hermana starts the conversation, asking about us. When we stopped by the other day, we were unable to say much, and today we can give the whole spiel. I tell her where I'm from, and pull out my little album of photos to share, including family portraits. My parents, me, and my 3 siblings all posed in front of a cornfield, much cheaper than the studio photography. Elder Suarez, meanwhile, recounts his conversation story, and Hermana Camiletti listens particularly attentively, asking questions throughout. She's a convert, after all. She's comparing notes. Once my companion has caught up to the present in his autobiographical timeline, I decide to ask my own question. So, Hermana, how did you find the church? She puts her hands on her knees and takes in a breath. Well, I grew up Catholic, like most folks, but the Catholic Church never sat well with me. My family barely ever went to church anyway. Baptized as a kid, catechism, first communion, and listo. That's what religion was. But then a friend invited me to attend her church, one of those evangelical churches. They met in a little warehouse across the ruta back then. At first, I thought that it was very noisy, but when I paid attention, I heard people there actually talking to God, not talking to saints or the Virgin, directly to God. And they pointed out to me in the Bible that there were gifts that followed the saints, tongues and healing and prophecy and all that. All those gifts were in the evangelical church. I never saw them in the Catholic Church. And as I went, the Spirit poured itself out onto me too, and I could speak in tongues and sometimes interpret when others were speaking in tongues. I've been listening, of course, but while forking and spooning guiso into my muzzle now, though I pause and turn my full attention to the Hermana. I've never heard someone describe themselves speaking in tongues before. But she doesn't elaborate, and I decide to let her finish her story instead of interrupting with my myriad inquiries. My husband was never interested in religion, but we got along, and he had no problems with me going and taking my daughter, Rocio, who was little at the time, with me, so it worked out. But then Osvaldo had a heart attack. Couldn't get him into the clinic in time. The sudden somberness clashes with the bright sunlight and green leaves around us. And the pastor and some of my friends at church told me that he was going to hell because he hadn't accepted Jesus. I felt so betrayed. I stopped going. But Elderes, I never stopped believing in God or trusting in Jesus. Each night I prayed each morning, and I prayed and read the Bible. For years I did this. And then one night I had a dream. In my dream I saw my husband, and he was with 2 young men. He told me to listen to them. The next day the missionaries came by, clapping at my house. I didn't want to talk to people from a church, but something pushed me to the door, to open the door, and I let them in. And they taught me about the plan of salvation, and I knew in my heart right there and there that it was true. So I got baptized, and a year later I saved up. I went to the temple down in La Plata, received my endowment, and got sealed to Osvaldo and Rocio. I hadn't realized that she'd been to the temple. I will admit that sometimes I miss tongues, but I feel God is with me still, even if I don't have that gift now. Huh. Elder Suarez, whose plate is now nearly empty, leans forward. Hermana, thank you for sharing. That is a very powerful story, and I'm so sorry for your loss. You're most welcome, Elder. The loss is only temporary, thanks to God. I nod, pondering and curious. I have to ask. So, Hermana, is there something at this time that prevents you from attending church? To that she gives a small, knowing smile, full of sadness and garnished with reproof. Let's talk about that another time, Elder. Today I'm just grateful that you two are here. With that, her eyes suddenly brighten, and she slides off her chair to her feet, jogging back into the house. Elder Suarez and I exchange a quick glance while she's gone, but all we manage to communicate without speech is that we both have curiosity remaining. She comes back with another tray, this one with another dish that I recognize. Pasta frolla. Figured that I might as well make you something else special too. I take in the smell of the warm crust, the sharp light sweetness of the quiche paste on top. It smells delicious, Hermana. Thank you so much. Oh, Elder, no hay por qué. She pries out a square and slides it onto my plate. It tastes as good as it smells. January 11th, 2008, Friday. Morning. We're strolling down Victoria Street, working our way to a couple of addresses from the branch membership list. The day is clear and a breeze rustles the leaves of the trees along the packed earth road. By the afternoon, the sun is in the north, not the south, where my Boy Scout's brain expected to find it. Will probably be oppressive. We're hoping to do contact with folks that we see who are up and about this early. I cannot but contrast Campo Largo with Conquista. Besides my incidental glimpses of Arambura, they're the only Paranero cities that I have seen. Well, built-up areas. Campo Largo is nowhere near being a city. From what I can gather, Campo Largo and Conquista were founded a couple decades apart, around the turn of the century. Conquista before Campo Largo. 1921, I think. Weirdly, that's about 3 centuries after Riberas, just on the other side of the Paraná River. I'm not sure why it took so long to cross a river. Anyway, Puerto Mocavi was technically its own municipality down by the riverside, now basically a Conquista suburb. It's packed with blocks of new, conjoined viviendas. In Campo Largo, on the contrary, most homes are separated and many appear older in states of disrepair. Dark streaks descend their facades, where rain has washed down accumulated dust, while from below the rain has kicked dust up against the lower edges of the houses and walls. Paint peels off stucco. The stains are fainter than in Conquista, though, perhaps reflecting the drier climate, the brighter sun and the lighter soil. Scattered all over our homes with new paint jobs and fences that aren't just welded rebar, often in cheerful colors that in the States would be called garish, teal, goldenrod, flamingo pink. The sun fades these colors over time, though, their confidence and exuberance mellowed by entropy. I'm pondering a house whose facade is painted purple when Elder Suarez pipes up. Elder, I was reading my English book today, and it said that you shortened will not to won't. Do you know why? It seems really strange. He's pretty far along in the grammar portion, or else he was skipping around. In any case, I won't bring up the strangeness of Spanish conjugations. Actually, I do. Roughly. Do you want the short explanation or the long one? He shrugs. We have time. Time to break out some etymology. But first, a contact. I point out an older bull drinking mata in front of his house. I put on a smile and approach, hand raised in greeting. We get no more than 5 steps before he retracts the bombilla of his mata from his lips. Soy católico, apostólico, romano. We veer back towards the center of the street, avoiding an oncoming moto that kicks up dust right in our path. After walking through the cloud with my eyes screwed shut, I resumed the conversation. So back in the day, will was an independent verb, not an auxiliary one. I'm not sure when it shifted to indicate the future tense. In any case, it had a meaning like to desire. I had a thought that I have to share. Actually, fun fact, you know albedrío, agency? Of course. Of course he knows, I tell myself. It's only a core principle of what we teach. The reason that we came to Earth at all, to experience free will and to use it as well. Anyway, so in English, another term for it is free will, the noun form of the verb, to will. So the verb also developed a sense of to choose or to make real. He's listening, I gather, but he uses a clawed finger to point out a frizzy-furred canine woman trimming a bush. The instant she hears footsteps, she looks up. She waves her hand to dismiss us. Soy católico, apostólico, romano. We didn't even deviate from our path this time, so we just continue. Here's a fun thing too. You know how in Spanish you form the future tense by tacking present tense endings onto the infinitive? And you form conditionals by sticking on the past imperfect endings? Claro. So in English, back in the day, will was the present tense of the verb. It now forms the future tense, and would was the past tense. and now is used to form the conditional. They are parallel with Spanish. He bobs his head, acknowledging the point and seeming to process it. How interesting. That could help with remembering it. He mutters the two words, will and would, a couple of times to himself. I noticed that he, like many Latino missionaries, has trouble with consonants in places where Spanish doesn't have them, or pronounces them differently. I'm in the middle of explaining the differences between the vocal dental fricative, the Spanish D, and the English D. De, D, de. A voiced alveodental plosive. When we notice a raven exiting her front door, she doesn't even break her step. She just shakes a finger and points to a little shrine of the Virgin of Italy we hadn't spotted. Onwards down Victoria and back to our chat. This is really funny though, that they're like trying to convert people, but there's like a whole bunch of like Catholic people going like, step back. Actually, there's a good example of the verb to will in translations of the New Testament. Also, I'm seeing a lot of dogs in the background. You know John 7:17, where Jesus says, "Whosoever wants to do the will of God, he will know if the doctrine is God's, or if I speak from my own account?" He nods. It's not an uncommon scripture in the missionary work, where we're inviting people to do new and often intimidating things all the time. So in the King James Version, they use the verb will in its original sense, but in a construction that looks like the future tense auxiliary verb. So English speakers interpret Jesus as saying, if you actually do God's will, you'll know whether it's from God. So they say that you have to act first, not just desire to please God. But that's not the meaning of the original. It's a misunderstanding based on, I don't know how to say semantic drift. On swervings of meaning? He seems to get my point. I see. So that interpretation is wrong then? Oh, I didn't anticipate that question right off the bat. I'm rescued from responding by spotting a male tortoise of indeterminate age. They're wrinkled at any stage of life. Sunning himself. Hola, señor. He looks up and over at us and says in a familiar refrain, Ay, chicos, que soy católico apostólico romano. Back to Elder Suarez's question then. I decide to hedge a bit. We've heard general authorities use that scripture to make the mistaken point that action instead of desire is a prerequisite to the divine bestowal of knowledge. It irks me, but I'm not sure how Elder Suarez would react if I suggested I read scripture more accurately than some apostles. Well, not so much that it's wrong, but that we should really be consulting different translations, ones that aren't from Shakespeare's time. Elder Suarez adjusts his scripture bag on his shoulder. From what you said, it seems like English language interpretations is wrong. It would be consequential to, if discerning God's will requires only desire, but not action, that's a much smaller leap of faith. That's not the direction that I expected he'd go. I suppose that's right. Plus, doesn't Alma say that you only need to desire to believe to know that a teaching is good? It seems to me that both interpretations could be right, but at different stages, your initial knowledge comes from a desire, and further knowledge comes by following the will of God. A young male llama, wool-trimmed in a rakish style, walks down the road towards us. Elder Suarez raises a hand to wave, but we hear back, Soy católico apostólico romano. Okay, continuing onward. I can't say that I'm necessarily fond of Elder Suarez's interpretation. He's bringing in the words of the prophet Alma. Even if ye can no more than desire to believe, let this desire work in you, even until ye believe in a manner that ye can give place for a portion of my words. In short, if you have a desire to believe, that can be the seed of actual faith and, eventually, sure knowledge. Elder Suarez is using Alma to say that a desire to follow God's will is sufficient to know its truth. That's fair, but I don't like the attempt to justify an interpretation based on an obsolete translation. Alma is also scriptural, though, and I don't really want to argue. Plus, I'll admit that it's a clever interpretation. I'll let it stand. I could see that, yeah. It doesn't make much sense, say, to ask someone to get baptized in order to decide whether getting baptized is the right thing. We take a couple of steps, scuffing the dirt. Elder Suarez actually stops on the corner of the intersection, though, and I halt alongside him. A question about agency and will? I raise an eyebrow and point an ear towards him. Back in Missionary Training Center, someone brought up a talk that said 4 things were needed for agency to exist. First, laws need to exist, so agents can obey or disobey. Second, opposites need to exist, or else there's nothing to choose between. I think that I've seen adaptations of the schema. A church video that we watched in early morning seminary back in high school comes to mind, but I'm not quite sure what he's building up to. Third, agents need to have a knowledge of good and evil, and fourth, the freedom of choice must be unrestrained. So my question, did Adam and Eve have agency in the Garden of Eden, specifically before they partook of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Ah, now I see the riddle, but I don't think that it's too hard to answer. I'd say yes. They both chose to partake of the fruit after all. They could have done otherwise and thereby stayed in the garden. I don't mention that my pet theory is that the Eden story is a parable about the prehistoric development of anthropos' moral consciousness. But without the knowledge of good and evil, could they have had a true choice to eat the fruit? A segment of my mind suspects that he's testing me somehow, but another segment suggests that he's sincerely trying to grapple with the problem and sees me as a trustworthy interlocutor. I decide to move ahead, assuming the latter, and I have an idea that might appeal to him. Maybe it's not so. Either or. You said something about learning truth, that we can get some confirmations through a desire to believe, and others through action. Maybe there are different levels of agency predicated on different degrees of knowledge. I pause, gathering my words. I want to express this accurately. Adam and Eve could have just enough knowledge in the garden to make the decision that they did, to choose pain and death, labor and hardship, but also to choose to progress towards their divine potential as God's children, and their potential as parents of their own children. I raise a finger for emphasis. As God intended. The fortunate fall, as they call it. He squints down, gaze directed inwards instead at the zanja to which his snout points. I look on expectantly, wondering if he'll accept my proposal. I can see that. Phew. Adam fell, specifically, that men might be. Men are that they might have joy. Elder Suarez completes a scriptural couplet. I decide to add a phrase from temple ordinances to expand the thought. That they might have joy and rejoicing in their prosperity. Still he ponders. A breeze rustles the leaves of the tree overhead, and a tiny funnel of dust spirals along the road. Facing what I hope is a receptive audience, I further dare to trouble the clean quartet of prerequisites for agency to exist. Besides, none of us ever work with the perfect information, factual or moral, and there are plenty of options that we can't truly select. Our agency is always compromised in some way. And sometimes, well, there are competing goods, and we have to choose between them. I hold out my hands like scales, weighing the choice in the garden. Live forever but stagnant, versus growth but with pain and death. Just like Eve, I let the hand laden with the imaginary burden of knowledge and morality descend further, winning out in the balance. Elder Suarez's gaze turns up towards me. It's penetrating, as if he's trying to weigh me. Facing that intense level of scrutiny, I offer him a sheepish grin, and turn my weight and scale gesture into a shrug. He doesn't react. I'll have to ponder that. I lower my hands, the tension dissipating. Oh, sure. It's not an easy question. I pause and realize that between tangents and intervening contacts, I've forgotten what got us on this topic. What were we talking about originally, Elder? Elder Suarez lets out a small, amused snort. You told me that you knew why will not became won't. I think for a minute. Do I actually know? Well, some English verbs derived from the Germanic sources change their vowels when they change tense, like will and would. Incidentally, so I've always figured that it was related to that. Aren't sure, though. I guess I'm not. Well, I'm sure that if you desire it, the knowledge will come to you. I shoot a glance at him when I narrowed. I really hope that he's not saying that the Holy Ghost is running around dispensing forgotten philosophies. A quirk of his mouth lets me know that he's joking, and I let out a performatively loud laugh. Elder Suarez then looks up, winces a second, and waves at something behind me. I can feel blood rush to my ears. Oops, I bet I botched a potential contact there, looking like a fool in public. But when I look, there is another male deer seated in front of his bare brick home. To my shock, he waves back at us, beckoning us to approach. I glance over at Elder Suarez with a shrug and walk over. Buen dia, señor. He leans more upright, his unclothed stomach slightly rolling forward as he does so. Hola, chicos. We're almost to him when he reaches out a hand behind his chair. Bueno, I don't believe in any church, che. His words seem particularly slow, belabored. But I do believe in two things. The Virgen. And? Oh, that's why he's speaking that way. He raises a litter box of wine into view and laughs. And the vine. Querer un traguito? Want a swig? I emit a deep sigh. Will this be an effective use of time to speak to this day-drunk deer? It will not. January 12, 2008, Saturday. Presidente Vargas doesn't seem to have much hope when we mentioned reaching out to the Duran family, who had caught my eye on the member list because they had 6 children, 2 of them still unbaptized. Presidente Vargas explained that the only times that they'd been to church in the past decade were for a couple weeks before each of their kids turned 8, and after the child got baptized, they'd vanish again. Even then, Hermana Duran would come, never the Hermana. Presidente Vargas vaguely remembers her storming out of the church in response to a comment about her hatchlings squawking too loudly, and after that, never returning. He wished us good luck, though. So here we are walking up to the Duran house, prepared only with the foggy recollections from someone's adolescence. Perhaps memories even filtered through the church rumor mill, which grinds every reason for not attending church into supposed laziness or alleged desire to sin. Elder Suarez and I plan to ask them about their conversation and their beliefs when it comes to the church. After that, we'll try to find out why they're not active. There's a vulture, gaunt and a little scraggly in front of the house, doing a bit of maintenance in the late morning. That must be Hermano Duran. I shouted a greeting and then he raises his feathered bare head, immediately unstacking and setting out chairs for us. So, not unfriendly, at least in the Hermano's case. The other adult avian who emerges must be Hermana Duran. We sit in the proffered chairs. A couple children mill about, between fledglings and adolescents, but they don't join the conversation. We agree that we'll introduce ourselves. Me first, and then Elder Suarez, as he could share his conversion story and thus more naturally segue into asking for theirs. It works. Hermano Duran opens up first, as we'd expect, and tells us that when the missionaries came by, their message that he could know the truth through prayer appealed to him. He'd been especially confused among all the evangelical churches loudly rising to challenge Catholic hegemony, but he prayed and felt that Joseph Smith was a prophet and the Book of Mormon was true. For him, that was that. Hermana Duran watches during the explanation with what might be wariness. Her expression is difficult to interpret. What's more, she doesn't tell her conversion story when we ask, simply saying, same thing, with a wave towards her husband. That's not very informative. We bear our short testimonies about the utility of church activity. Elder Suarez talks about reading his scripture. I talk about attending church, keeping me on the straight and narrow, despite distractions at college. I've never read the Book of Mormon. The comment is so sudden that my brain skips a beat before registering it. Well, that's a curious statement. I've never read the Book of Mormon or any of the books or magazines at the church. Everyone was always using fancy words that I didn't know at church. What was standing in the way of you reading those things? I never learned how, Elder. Oh. A sequence of images flashes through my head. Sunday after Sunday, listening to others read passages out loud, a teacher writing down points to remember on the chalkboard, another testimony about reading the Book of Mormon. And, most mortifyingly, a cold call to read, and having to decline. That would do it. I lean forward and address her. I pace my words, speaking slowly not because it's the standard missionary tone, but instead because I want to make sure that I say the right thing. Thank you for sharing that, Hermana. Did you express that to anyone at church? She shakes her head. I'm so sorry to hear that you felt excluded for that, Hermana. It shouldn't be that way. Everyone has a place in God's kingdom, no matter what we can or cannot do. If others treat you badly for that, they're in the wrong. And I bet that they'd understand if you told them, and they'd be willing to help define unfamiliar words. In any case, we'd love to see you both at church again if you're willing. I have a sense that folks there would be excited to see you. She's listening closely. I'd like to say that I felt the spirit there, that it was guiding my words. I do feel a sense of affirmation at least, and I hope that it extends to the Durans and reaches their hearts. Shortly after, we end with a prayer and wave goodbye, off to the next potential appointment. Afternoon. On Mitre between Tegucigalpa and San Salvador, we come across an astoundingly rotund walrus with long whiskers who has wedged himself into a lawn chair. Aquatic anthropes are a novelty in such a dusty portion of the world. Even if he weren't the only visible person on the street, there might be an interesting story there. We walk up. He watches us from under heavily wrinkled brows, sipping his mate. Buen dia. Buen dia, chicos. Great to meet you. I'm Elder Hartley, and this is my... You're Mormons, right? They call us that, yes, but I had some Mormons visit me once. Well, let's see where this goes. Oh, yeah? Yeah, a couple of years back. They left me one of their Bibles. Oh, the Book of Mormon? Yeah, the Mormon Bible. Okay. He didn't get very far, but pressing onward. Did you get to read any of it? The walrus snorts. For him, a snort seemed to be quite an involved process. Yeah, I read about Joseph Smith, your guy. Joseph Smith, not John. And now he ran across the devil. The devil. Oh, did he read only the part of Joseph Smith's testimony? Did he stop before Joseph had the first vision? Did he only get the story of how a dark presence seized Joseph, attempted to prevent him from praying, and tried to end his life? I tell you, something's wrong if you got the devil after you. I'm about to cordially object, but he cuts me off even as I open my mouth. And then all night I dreamt that the devil was chasing me. I don't want the devil after me. All right then. So have a nice day, chicos. Watch out for the devil behind you. My brain stops formulating rejoinders long enough to compute that our penipped friend is dismissing us. Best to move on then. Keep this interaction short, polite, and informative. Well, in any case, you're always welcome to visit the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by the plaza, Sunday at 9. He waves us off, pointing at his eye, a warning. Watch out, the devil. I wave goodbye with a smile. Hope you have a nice day. He sips his mate, looking the other direction. We step away from his porch onto the hard-packed road. Sometimes it's the little things. like deflecting insinuations that you're demonic. January 13th, 2008, Sunday. It's rare that I'm animated and smiling as we pile into the bench on a Sunday night, all too rare. More often is a sense of fruitless exhaustion at failed plans and especially at investigators not in church meetings, buoyed only by the knowledge that we can try something new the next week. Tonight is one of those rare happy nights though. I'm grinning as I unlock the door. I can't wait to report her success. Elder Suarez's smiles are also rare. His personality seems to restrain them, but he's pulled up the corners of his mouth tonight. Planning will be quick tonight. Let's get to it. We kneel quickly, give thanks for how everything went during the past day, and ask for guidance as we plan for the next day. We get up and I toss my agenda on the desk. Elder Suarez pulls out his and opens it carefully. I finish the tallies for the day and then turn to tomorrow's page. I immediately block off the afternoon. 1,500 hours onward to Conquista for Zone Conference. We've got to catch a bus to Aramburo, from which we'll travel in a rented van to Conquista for the meeting the next day. We'll have to spend the night there. Dozens of missionaries from across 2 provinces all together all day. It's a great break from the daily pattern. And folks would definitely be curious about Campo Largo. I feel that we have some good stories to share. Which leaves just a couple of hours in the morning. Who haven't we gotten to yet from the weekly planning? Elder Suarez flips back a few pages, scans his blocky, draftsman-like handwriting, and reads aloud. We got that referral from the zone leaders, Juan, the one who randomly dropped in the church in Arambura while the Family History Center was open. Honestly, I can't believe that I'd forgotten about him. Referrals like that are so rare that I don't routinely reconsider them, instead defaulting to the same standard plans each day. But as I check my own notes, I refresh my memory. A random guy showing up at a church building with an interest in family history sounds pretty golden to me. Oh yeah, good option there. Thanks for the reminder. And there are also plenty of former investigators from the old area book. My eyes scan down the page to where I copied down Ivan Drubik's address next to an incredulous annotation. Took all the lessons? Though his last missionary contact was 7 years ago, at least we wouldn't have to start from scratch with him. One of those two sounds good. I guess the golden referral? Sounds great. We pencil in the plan in the appropriate hours and turn to tallying up the numbers for the week. Not as great as we'd hoped, but it's not bad for the first full week in a formally closed area. Plus, we always fall short of our goals. That's just how it goes. Once we've got our numbers, we close the planning meeting with a short prayer, then we wait for the zone leaders to call for the weekly report. Shortly after 2200 hours, the phone rings. Hola, Elderes. ¿Cómo les pasa? Ah, there's that accent. It's great. Pretty good here. And how is Elder Suarez? The snake leans in. Doing well, Elder. Good, good. Great to hear. Got your numbers? EC. 0 investigators baptized and confirmed. 0 investigators with a baptismal date. 0 investigators attending sacrament meeting. 0 lessons with a member present. Hey, come on, it's only been a week. We're working on it. And you haven't heard the rest yet. I clear my throat. 12 other lessons, 4 contacted referrals, 15 new investigators. Wait, ¿qué capos ustedes? That's a compliment. I knew that it'd be coming. Thanks. And 5 lessons with less active members. And one of those families came to church today, including the mother, who hasn't been to church in a decade, and we just barely had a lesson with them yesterday. Well done, Elderes. I'm sure that you'll keep it up. See you tomorrow for the trip to Conquista. Y sí pues, see you tomorrow. Thanks for the work. Chaucito. Ciao, ciao. I hang up the phone and slump back, a satisfied grin on my face. I throw up my arms in celebration. I think back to the trepidation that I felt on the bus a mere 10 days ago. All that anxiety, all that doubt, turns out they were unfounded. I've got a really good feeling about this transfer. No se debe revelar por ahora. Ought not to be revealed at the present time. Is that like their version of to be continued? Um, so yeah, that was the first update. I want to say update or the first release of this visual novel. Um I don't know what to say about it because it was a heck of a lot more religious than I anticipated. And I don't know how I feel about that. It's not bad if you're into that. It's just I was expecting a little bit more something else, I guess. I do appreciate all the Spanish because it was throwing me off. I am so rusty when it comes to reading Spanish because even with my friends from Mexico and Zordi from Chile and Jaden from Colombia and even Tanner from Brazil, they usually speak English to me. I tell them you can write in Spanish, but no, they speak English with me. Anyways, but actually no, Zordi speaks Chilean Spanish with me, which is like a whole nother thing. It's like it's it just throws me off. Anyways, but I do wonder though, because there are some words in there that were used which also threw me off because it's like, wait, wouldn't you spell this a little differently? Anyways, but yeah, it is nice to read Spanish from time to time and visual novels. Now about the visual novel itself, I get a weird little vibe from our dear boy. I'm not sure if you guys get the vibe also, but considering how he was already planning on saying like, "Hey, there is room for um gay people in the church or whatever," and then when he kind of got like the gay panic when he's like, "Wait, is this implying that Jesus is gay?" He kind of had like the little gay panic, and then he's like, "Oh my god, I hope that nobody heard my inside thought." I was like, "I think I know what you are." um Looking at the itch.io page, um actually, can I bring it up? Let me see if I can bring it up real quick. But unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to bring up a display capture. I don't know if it's even gonna work. Lately, it hasn't been working. Um. Okay, so reading the synopsis right here, it says Elder Travis Hartley is right on track. He spent the last 6 months getting accustomed to life as a Mormon missionary in South America, in the South American nation of Paraná, which for some reason, for me, my brain wants to say Panama. Now, however, comes two big shifts. He's been reassigned to a small rural town that hasn't hosted missionaries for years, and to train a brand new missionary, both big responsibilities. Bundled off on a bus beside his new companion, Elda Hartley has his work cut out for him, getting to know his companion, the local church members, and the town, all while spending 10 hours per day in the sweltering January sun trying to find and teach anyone who's interested. He knows who he is and why he's here. He knows how to be presentable, personable, and how to preach, how to plan. He's got this. Yeah, everything is fine. That is, of course, until everything starts to go off the rails in unsettling ways, impossible ways, ways he can't believe or explain. And like, yeah, this is a safe for work visual novel. Um, and like it says that Campo Largo is a work of fiction that takes inspiration from the author's experiences and research. While some locations, characters, and events are inspired by reality, they have all been composited, anonymized, extrapolated, recontextualized, and or fictionalized for dramatic effect. Um, so it kind of seems like something strange is gonna happen based on this. Um, and by strange and unsettling and impossible ways, I maybe something spooky, maybe something that might cause him to question his faith, maybe? I don't know. Um, so yeah, like, I'm reading this because it sounded interesting, not so much because of the whole, like, religious aspect. Not that that doesn't have a place in storytelling, but you hopefully know why I read this, um, considering my track record with visual novels, which usually veer towards spooky horror and stuff like that. Okay? That's why I read it. Um, but yeah. Again, um, this is a work in progress, so like maybe for the next update I'll like read ahead and then see if it starts, like veering off into like strange and weird. Um, Not that it doesn't have its own merits, okay? Okay. Anywho, so yeah, um, this was the first, the introduction, and I don't think that this is the complete first chapter. Um, I think the first chapter is my mission, and I think that there's going to be routes, which is strange, right? Because it seems like a pretty, um, like, what's the word? Where it's just like a pretty straightforward visual novel that it doesn't have any like, ooh, if you click this, it's going to expand or whatever. Um, but it has routes, and apparently the first route is being worked on right now. And yeah, I don't know if you caught it right there, but it says that it's pretty advanced already in development. So like, yeah. Anywho, what are your thoughts? Write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Campo Largo, you can do so by going down to the link in the description, which will have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download and play the game yourself, or stay up to date with whatever is going on with it. They do have a Patreon and a Ko-fi, which you can see right here. I will be linking those down in the in the in the description. So in case you want to support the project, and I will be linking down to if you want to support the channel. It gets you earlier access to these videos as they're being scheduled, and it does help support me. Um, or if you don't want to do that, then you can do Ko-fi. I've also been thinking about doing merch. Maybe I would sell it through Ko-fi. How do you guys think? No, what do you guys think about that? Um, yeah. Anyways, oh, throne in case you feel generous. So there's that. I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.